Pete from Cheap Homesteading, and today we're in the garage and we are going to talk about emergency preparedness. And part of it is having fuel stored, stabilizing your fuel, and just being able to transfer it and all that. So I'll tell you the truth, I have not really stored a ton of fuel for a length of time, so I don't know how any of these stabilizers work over time. And if I need the fuel, we'll never know how long it has to last. But if for some reason I don't need the fuel, we can kind of do some comparisons and tests, because I'm going to have multiple containers with different stabilizer in it. So I think this is going to be really awesome over time. If I need the fuel, well, I'm going to end up burning it, so I won't really know how well it worked, because it'll actually have come in handy to have, which is good too. So my goal was to have enough fuel to be able to run my generator for, like, I don't know, 3-4 weeks, maybe even a month. It would be nice, you know, to be able to not worry about it having to run to get fuel where there's no fuel at the station. In the past, I have not been good at my emergency preparedness. So when anything's happened, like an extended power outage or whatever, I've been scrambling to get fuel, like with everyone else, battling at the pumps, trying to get fuel. It doesn't happen very often, but you know what? When it does, it's suddenly a shock. And I thought, you know what? I really feel that I need to be a little bit better with my emergency preparedness. So if the power goes out or anything happens that you can't get to the fuel pump for a while, it'd be nice to have a little bit of fuel stored. And the only way you can store fuel properly and actually have it last is to have it stabilized. And there is many different stabilizers in the market. I got one here and it's from Honda. It's a Honda stabilizer, and it'll tell you it'll only do it for 6 months. It may stabilize it longer, but it only lasts 6 months. I believe the Clean Flow one says it'll do it for a year. I think, yes. Wow, they don't even say how long. So it doesn't really say how long it stabilizes it for. My guess is for a year, because most of them are a year. This, like Stable, I forget how they say, Stable and Startron, they have like 2 years. Like it actually stabilizes it for 2 years. Safe for all gasoline engines, removes gums and carbons and varnish, cleans carb injectors, stabilizes gas for up to 2 years. Disperses moisture to sub-micron sized particles that can safely eliminate an engine operation. Okay, so the best way to have long-term storage of fuel is basically to have non-ethanol fuel. But non-ethanol fuel is awful hard to find anymore. This stabilizer says it's good for ethanol fuel, and it says it's up to 2 years. I don't know if it'll last 2 years, but it's kind of nice that they actually say it. The other ones don't, and this one doesn't even give an amount of time that I can see anyways. So this one says if you put too much in it, it's not going to hurt anything. So one bottle will do 183 liters. So it's a little less than a whole drum of fuel, so one bottle. So that is actually, it actually goes pretty far, because a lot of these are only for way less amount of fuel than that. So this thing here cost me $10, $11 a bottle. This one's probably about the same, but it doesn't even do half the fuel. So you really look at the stabilizer you're buying, and it may be more expensive, but some of these go way farther. So make sure you find a stabilizer that'll do 2 years. It's good for ethanol fuel, and it'll do the most amount of fuel in the bottle, because if they just water it down or whatever, it's not going to do anything for you. It'd be nice over time, if I haven't used the fuel, we will really do a test and see which one does better, because I am going to stabilize one with the Honda, and I'm going to stabilize another bunch of fuel with this. So, and if we don't end up using it, we'll probably see how well the fuel lasts. But if we end up needing it, well, I'll be gone, so we'll have it. So it won't be much of a test after that. The Startron fuel conditioner is probably what I'm going to use. As I say, I bet it's the same stuff as Stable. It's got all the same specs, so it probably is. We got some fuel. We're going to use the stabilizer in it. Another thing is make sure that you actually mix it. So if you got a container, like my drum is about a quarter full. I'm going to dump probably the rest of the stabilizer to stabilize the whole drum. And then I'm just going to dump more fuel in. So when the new fuel goes in, it mixes it in the drum and I don't have to physically mix it or stick something in the tank or anything like that. So that's probably what I'm going to do. The stabilizer, it is super important, especially with ethanol fuels. A lot of people say, you know, you can get long-term fuel storage out of it if you just get non-ethanol fuel. Non-ethanol fuel is very hard to get. Where I am, none of the fuel grades have non-ethanol fuel, and it's all basically 10% ethanol fuel. So I think we're pretty much living in that reality, and we're pretty well going to have some percentage of ethanol fuel in your tank, and it's kind of nice to see that they got stabilizer that kind of works with it. It probably doesn't work as good as non, but it's what we live in today. One thing about stabilizer, if you stabilize your fuel, you're good for a year. Make sure you mark your drum when you stabilized it last. Stabilizer doesn't last forever, so it's important that you mark on your drum or your containers when it was stabilized last. So a year from that point, you have to stabilize it again. This says 2 years. I don't trust that. I like the fact that they say 2 years. So what I'm going to do is every year, if for some reason I didn't use it or we're hanging on to it or whatever reason, I'm going to stabilize it in a year if I want to continue on to the next year. Because as I say, stabilizer doesn't last forever and you got to stabilize it every year. But I wouldn't wait for 2 years like they said this. I would probably still do it every year at least. This Honda one only goes for 6 months. It may go longer, but every 6 months you're going to have to stabilize it with the Honda stabilizer. It's a little bit labor intensive. You got to make sure that you actually keep track of that, and I'm not the most organized, so I'm going to write it on the barrels. I'm going to make sure that I know when I have to stabilize them again, and I'll put it on the calendar and everything so I can get out there and do it and stay on top of it. After last year, I told myself I'm going to put stabilizer in everything because suddenly nothing ran. I had to get my generator running. I even got my generator running. I made a video and I haven't actually ever edited it. It's about a year old. So I might end up editing that and showing you guys kind of what happens when you don't use stabilizer. So I promised myself I'm going to use stabilizer on everything. So I thought, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. It's just got a lot better with using stabilizer, and then I won't have to be fixing my stuff as much. So that is definitely what the plan is in the future. This day and age we live in, I think it's really important that we have a little bit of fuel stored up just so we can actually run generators. I live in a cold climate, so when the power goes out, it gets cold pretty quick because you don't have lights. But the worst part is your house is warm because of the wood stove. So you gotta run your freezers and your fridges and all that kind of stuff. So you need to have a little bit of fuel anyway so you can run your generators. I feel that is really, really super important, especially this day and age. I just wanted to make a quick video about stabilizer and the importance of your emergency preparedness. I haven't been so good in the past, but this year I feel it's really, really important. So this year I am getting ready and making sure we're prepared. And part of that is getting a fuel stabilizer and storing a bit of fuel. So that's about enough for today. You guys have a good one.